7 boaters are back on land tonight after a frightening experience at sea. Their vessel sprung a leak, and before they knew it, they were in the water watching it sink about 30 miles off the coast of Cayena Point.
The SAR alarm went off at about 1 in the morning. And the initial pipe that they made was a sailing boat taking on water between Oahu and Kauai.
We went into the ops end, got all the pertinent information, and started moving out with our mission planning. First couple of things we had to figure out was whether the crew was going to be able to de-water the vessel that was taking on water with a pump, or if they were going to have to abandon ship.
As we got closer to scene, we were told by sector that the crew was abandoning ship, that they were taking on too much water and wouldn't be able to stay afloat. So we opted at that point to get rid of our dewatering pump since it was not necessary, and also save on weight and to give us more hovering time on scene.
Once we understood that the boat was going into the water, I knew that the case was going to get very complicated very quickly. So we made the decision to launch the C-130 to provide cover for the helicopter because of the amount of survivors that were in the water.
Before we took off, I had discussed with the pilot the possibility of myself remaining on scene for 2 reasons. Partly because it would save some cabin space. The 65 Dolphin is not a big helicopter. We can fit 4, 5, maybe 6 people in there on a good day. There were 7 people, and it just wasn't going to work.
In this case, Lieutenant Gedimer, now Lieutenant Commander Gedimer, made a decision with the crew that based on how full the aircraft was and and the fuel limitation that they were against, that they had to leave 3 survivors in the water, and Officer Heller was one of those that volunteered to stay.
After we spotted them, we did a NVG-aided approach to a controlled hover, and we kicked out our pump. We deployed our rescue swimmer, who backed us up and made sure that everybody was okay. And he called us and said, hey, everybody's okay. And we started to hoist up the survivors.
We hoisted 4 people into the helicopter. At that point, it was full.
So we had the extra raft that we went ahead to deploy, but once it deployed, it did not inflate. Fortunately, we had our crew raft in the aircraft, and after some discussion on safety and risk versus gain, we opted to deploy our crew raft out of the helicopter to provide Officer Heller and the other survivors a means of flotation and get out of the water.
So shortly after the helicopter left, the C-130 flew overhead, and I pulled out my radio and I was communicating with them, just telling them what was going on. I said, there's myself and 3 survivors in a raft, and we're uninjured and happy until someone can come get us.
The whole time, the C-130 helped guide the small boat to the location of the survivors in the AST-2 Heller, which was good because it was zero illumination, or it was zero lunar illumination. It was a very dark night with a lot of overcasts. Seas were between 5 and probably 8 to 10 feet, which caused it even more confusion when, you know, the vessel's going through the troughs and the crests and can't see the survivors in the raft. So
it was a pretty smooth rescue. They just showed up. I jumped in the water. I helped kind of get the raft over next to the boat. Things were rocking a little bit, but not too much. So the boat crew came and saved the day.
Selfless service is probably the phrase that would epitomize the qualities that Abe has. He was all for it. Never once did he hesitate. Never once did he think about himself. He was always thinking about the survivor's condition and the assessment of, you know, the proper risk that we would take as a crew to help their situation.
Officer Heller is definitely very deserving of this award. He's always been had the best attitude, one of the best attitudes for a Coast Guardsman, rescue swimmer, and aviator. Just a good all-around person to work with, and most importantly, a great Coast Guardsman and a good friend.
And so I'm so proud of the air station, and I'm so proud of the crew, and I'm so proud of Officer Heller, and I'm so glad that he's getting this award because he's deserving of it.
I do realize I'm getting a lot of individual attention for what probably 25 different Coast Guardsmen had their hands involved in, and I feel a little humbled that I'm the guy getting all the kudos, and a lot of people had to do their job, and a lot of things had to come together to make this happen.
Please welcome tonight's awardee from Air Station Barbers Point, AST2 Abram Heller.